Right, folks, so when we normally speak about Indian motorsport, you don't really think of titles, success, victories and the glory. But this man sitting right here next to me came back to motorsport last year after so many years away from the sport, came in, first shot, won the Elite Club Championship in the Euro NASCAR series, and his story from this year will leave you completely amazed. Advait, can you just give the viewers a bit of an idea about your journey in the Elite 2 category this year? Because it was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Soumil. This year was absolutely incredible. We spoke last year after I got back to racing and I did the Elite Club Championship, and I said this year I was going to make the proper step up and do a full season in the Elite 2 division of the European NASCAR. And it was just amazing. I still can't believe now that I actually raced across Europe in arguably the fastest growing series in Europe right now, in the European NASCAR Championship. And I came fourth overall in a very, very competitive grid.
Do you pinch yourself often? Because
very often.
Considering the challenge that the series has to offer, which we'll discuss later on in the video, do you pinch yourself every night? Oh, I just did that.
Honestly, sometimes I really do have to do that because because it's been a very, very difficult journey, and I still don't realize that I actually raced in the Elite 2 division of European NASCAR this year. So it's like, there we go, we do it again.
But what makes this thing even more special is the fact that Advait had to face incredible budget issues. Advait, racing is expensive, but what were the challenges that you had to face in particular regarding this year?
As we always say, in motorsport, no money, no honey, as crass as it sounds. And that was the main reason why I didn't compete in 15, 16 and 17. Because I didn't have budget, and I did a bit of racing in Elite Club in 18. But there's been no sponsorship. I was funded back in the day in India, but I've had no sponsorship since then. And it's expensive racing in Europe. True. So I really struggled this year. I've got myself a job in London, and I have put in all my earnings, and I have worked tirelessly 14, 15 hours a day on my day job. And whatever money I've earned, I have put every single last dime of it into my championship this year. So it's been a very, very hard journey because I was struggling, right? I would actually book tickets to the race weekend on Tuesday or Wednesday and literally at the last minute do whatever round I could. It was crazy.
And I think in the end you had to miss out on one round as well, and still finishing fourth. How big of an achievement is that?
First of all, it's really heartbreaking to have actually missed the round. So I missed the Oval in Vendrai because I just didn't have the budget. It was bang on in the center of the season, and I was actually third in the championship at that moment. And I tried everything. I just did not manage to put together the budget, and I still came fourth overall in a grid of over 30 cars with some very, very competitive drivers. So it was a really big feat. And it was a struggle sitting out and actually watching the race on television. But hey, you know what? It's part and parcel of life. You got to just accept it and suck it up and move on.
But a question for you, Advait. Once you're fighting for the championship, I mean, you're in the heat of it, and you have to sit out a round. Do you even feel like watching the race? What's the thought process behind you at that point of time?
Yes and no. I mean, honestly, it was very heartbreaking, and I was very dejected the fact that I could not race, and all my main competition were racing, and the fact that the previous round was at in the Czech Republic, and I was third going into Vendrai had I gone there. So it was very, very sad that I didn't actually make it to that round, but I could not watch. These are my competitors. I had to see what they were doing, and I had to see how the race was going to turn out. So I was glued to the television back at home watching the NASCAR race.
Well, speaking of the competitors, this was one incredibly hotly contested championship, you could say, because the level of competition that we had this year in the Elite 2 Championship was completely mind-blowing. Advait, can you give everyone an idea about just the quality of the drivers taking part in this series this year?
Yeah, so I think that's what I think made it more special as well, was that so this year was the highest level of drivers they've ever had in the Elite 2 division. You have drivers who've raced at Le Mans, who've raced in Prototype, Super Trofeo, GP3, GP2, Auto GP champion Girelli, for example. So there was some seriously good level of drivers. And if you look at NASCAR, you've got the Elite 1 and Elite 2 division. So you technically say that the Elite 2 division is lower than the Elite 1. Drivers drive in Elite 2 and move up to Elite 1. And that's been the case over the past few years. But this year, I'm not sure what changed. And a lot of the drivers in Elite 2 are actually faster than Elite 1 drivers. It was at 4 separate tracks where Elite 2 pole was quicker than Elite 1. So I think for me, I have probably relatively no experience compared to some of the guys who I raced against. To come forth and to actually fight it out with these guys was pretty surreal.
I think that Elite 2 took pole position in 4 races. I mean, the pole lap was faster than Elite 1 because they saw you driving in Elite Club last year. Could that be the case?
Probably.
Because you were fabulous last year. And what was the jump like? Because I've heard that the difference between Elite Club and Elite 2 is gigantic. How did you adapt to that? And of course, the challenging conditions in the car.
I mean, everyone tells me not to say this, but I do. Between you and I, and being very frank, I'm a competitor. I really don't count the Elite Club Championship as an achievement personally. It was great to have come back, but as a competitor, it's not a big achievement. It's something which I'm proud of. This year, coming fourth was the biggest achievement of my life.
Yeah.
And so this year racing, because you are racing with cars with close to 30, grids with close to 30 cars.
Goodness.
And like very, very top level drivers, and we raced at 7 circuits around Europe. So in that sense, I mean, it was black and white, the jump. It was a colossal jump. And this was so it was, even if I count that aside, it was literally me going from MRF 1600 in Chennai and jumping up to a big European championship in Elite 2. So that's what I'd say how big the jump was.
Yeah. And I know that all of you watching are a big fan of stories, and we've all heard about the stories of Senna and Prost and Mansell and Nelson Piquet, and even for that matter Schumacher and Hakkinen. But the story of Advait's last race of the season, he was in P3 in the final race, and you couldn't have scripted this. Advait, just what happened over there?
So yeah, I still have nightmares about it. So it was actually the penultimate race, but at the final round in Zolder, the first two guys, Lasse and Giorgio, they were well ahead of us on points. So it was the championship fight at the final round was Lasse and Giorgio going for the title, and myself and Girelli going for third in the championship. This was for me, I think, one of the best races I've ever had at the iconic Zolder circuit, which I'm sure a lot of people know about.
It's lovely.
And it was an amazing race. I moved up to third. I was third, and we were literally glued to each other. Lasse and Maggi fighting in the front, myself in third, and I think Dubek was behind me, Girelli fifth, and Justin Kuhn sixth. So we were a line of cars, absolutely on it. And I was third, comfortably third. I'd been holding the guys back, and going into the last lap, 2 or 3 corners from the end, there was probably about 350 meters from where the incident happened to the finish line.
Right.
I threw it all away, and I can only blame myself. And I don't know what the reason is for that, but you're going into a hairpin, and the 2 cars were right in front of me, and I think I was probably looking to jump Maggi onto the straight. So I was trying to get a good exit, but I didn't realize that the car behind me could have lunged, and I put my hands up. I left the door open. Dubek lunged down the inside, and from third I went to fourth. Now 2 corners from the end. And if people know me, I'm a calm guy. I never ever get angry, but it's some rage kicked in, or I don't know what. And I was like, I am not losing this, because that race, and it was the overall championship for third. And I just put my foot down in fourth place after I lost it, and I was literally nudging this car. These are big 1500 kilo. Just a sec.
A bit like these trucks, slightly less heavy, but a lot faster.
So I'm in this big car with over 400 horsepower, and we were on the straight about, and then it was going to the left, right, and another straight in the finish. And I was like nudging this guy's back. I was like, I am getting going by, and he was swerving left, right. I had 2 wheels on the grass on the left, then swinging it to the right. I didn't know what was going on. I was nudging him, and I was not going by. And then going into the last corner, I left the braking too late, and I had a bit of a clutch issue, but luckily that didn't kick in earlier, and I just about locked up, almost lost the car, and it goes into a left, right, and I went into the mud, and I was like, I'm not holding back. I pinned the throttle, flew through the mud, flew back on, like probably drifted back onto the circuit, and this is where, in hindsight, I need to learn from this, because this is the rage that I'd kicked in, and I flew back onto the circuit, and Girelli was in 5th place at that time. Apparently, I saw this in the video later on, was that I missed him by probably less than 3 inches, and I saw he had to brake, had to like literally swing the car in my direction to avoid me. So in that time, Dubek had got ahead, Girelli went ahead, then Kunz was coming, and I was like, let me get points, because it was a drag race to the finish line, which was probably like 80 meters away. And we were going, and I saw, because I had a bad exit out of that mud trap, I saw Justin coming behind, and I was like, I'm not letting him go, and I had this blurred vision.
Oh, goodness.
And there was the wall on the right hand side, and I just started pushing, and we hit each other. The cars went up in the air, just
On the
a
main
bit-
stretch.
on
On the main stretch.
yeah, like 10 meters from the finish.
Goodness.
And I finished like a few millimeters ahead of him, so I was classified as fifth, and so I lost from third to fifth at the line. But because of my antics of cutting the corner and dangerously coming on track and touching Justin at the finish, I was given 2 30-second penalties.
Yeah.
And I got ultimately classified as 13th. So I basically dropped from 3rd
Yeah.
to 13th
Ah.
in a matter of 300-400 meters. And
Well.
that ultimately cost me 3rd in the championship, which I still beat myself up today about it.
Well, that's one ridiculous story. Well, we all make mistakes sometimes.
Yeah.
That's the other part. But Advait, finishing 4th in an international championship, and the kind of stories that you've mentioned, the kind of competition. What's next? Are you going to go for the championship next year? Are you going to go up to Elite 1? Because watching you drive this year, it has been quite the experience. The way you have been driving, the way you have been competing, even after facing so many budget issues, and I think racing for 3 different teams in one season. So what's next? What's going to happen next year, 2020?
So I think, again, in hindsight, it's easy to say, but I think I would have definitely been stronger had I been in the same team from the start. But again, I drove for 3 separate teams, and I was driving different cars, so I had to adapt to the different car, which was hard. And again, the budget issues, you're not mentally strong because you're not sure if you're going to have the budget for the next round.
Yeah.
So I think the one main thing is for next year, I want to have the budget in place before. And I believe if everything goes well, I want to continue with Carl Racing, who I did most of the championship with this year.
Yeah.
And I could do the jump to Elite 1, but I don't think I want to yet. I want to tackle Elite 2, and I want to win the championship. I know I've seen some of the drivers come in.
Yeah.
There's some good drivers coming next year, but I want to be prepared, do enough testing in advance, and absolutely go for the title next year.
Well, hopefully that happens. And finally, Advait, for all the viewers watching, NASCAR, it often has the prejudice of being too boring, too slow, only in circles. But Euro NASCAR is completely different. Why should the viewers watch Euro NASCAR, and why should they watch you race?
So your American NASCAR and Euro NASCAR are very different. American NASCAR is primarily big ovals, and they have a few road courses. European NASCAR is only 1 oval, and we have 7 road courses. And we're racing on Formula 1 circuits. We race at Hockenheim, we've raced at Zolder, which was an F1 circuit.
Yeah.
We race at Brands Hatch in the UK. We race at Most in Czech Republic, Valencia, which is a famous MotoGP
Lovely
circuit, exactly, in
Yeah.
Spain. Next year we're switching and we're going to Vallelunga, which is another MotoGP circuit. Yeah, in Italy. So there's some amazing circuits, and the racing is just phenomenal. I mean, it's proper wheel-to-wheel, door-to-door racing with some of the quickest drivers from around the world competing. And if you just watch one race, and I'd say watch Brands. Actually, honestly, watch any race, and you'll realize how exciting it is. And having an Indian driving, why not support the Indian driver?
Definitely. Well, Advait, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thanks a lot.
Congratulations. What a season that was. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be, I think, 3 steps further next year, hopefully. Well, congratulations, Advait, once again. Thank you so much for watching, folks. And do make sure that you follow Advait's progress next year, because he'll be gunning for it in the Elite 2 category next year. Hopefully, he wins. And this should be one exciting season to watch. Thank you so much for watching once again, folks. Cheers.